You know, guys, what I'm most grateful for this morning? For this beautiful hoodie I got from the MaGIC people. Because, you know, I've lived in Malaysia for 11 years, and believe it or not, I came here undressed. And I was cold, but I'll undress for now. Because I want to look good on the picture. So, Cheryl said that I spoke with this topic on several big stages. It's true, but I don't speak very often on this topic because I am an entrepreneur, I'm a publisher, I'm not a teacher. So this is a very unusual experience for me to speak in front of such a huge audience. And before we start, you know, last night when I finished my presentation and I looked at it, I got a little bit scared. I thought maybe it's too technical. But then when I heard Cheryl introduce what you guys were talking about yesterday, and when I heard our previous speaker, I realized that it's okay, I'll be fine. But I just wanted to ask you, how many of you guys have a subscribers list? Can you raise your hand if you have? Okay. It might be too early and you might be still sleepy, or maybe I don't speak English. How many of you guys actually collect email addresses of people who might potentially be your customers? Can you raise your hands? Oh, that's a bit better. Okay, so I'll talk about what to do with them. And if you don't do that, if you don't collect email addresses of people who might potentially be your customers, after you finish this awesome event and you come back to your business, I would strongly suggest that you start doing that. Because, yes, the technologies have changed and the channels of communicating with people have changed, but the essence hasn't changed. And what I've learned in business over the years that I've been doing business is that, you know, the tricks of the trade and the little things that we do, the technology, the channels, it's all cool, it's all important, but nothing is more important than actually getting the essence of the process, getting the true core of what you're supposed to do. And when it comes to marketing, the true core is actually psychology. It's not the internet, it's not the emails, it's nothing else. So hundreds of years ago, if you had a product, what you would do, you would go to a marketplace, you would set up a stall, and you'd start yelling out, hey, fresh rambutans, very cheap, come grab a bunch. That's essentially what we need to do right now. It's just that the means of communications have changed a little bit. So if you don't do that, please come home and start collecting email addresses of people who might potentially be your customers. Because believe it or not, but in 100 years, nothing has changed. The best way to get a new customer is actually to talk to a person who potentially might be your customer. And that's what I want to talk about today. So if in some points you will feel that I'm going a little bit weird, don't worry. As long as you get the essence of what I'm trying to tell you, the main message, you're fine. And before we start, I want to introduce you to a lady called Nadezhda or Nadia. This is my avatar. She's not my audience, because audience is, you know, 40% men, 60% women, 35 to 55 years old. She's actually the avatar. She's one person. She's 55 years old. She lives in Moscow. She's a woman with a higher degree. She's probably spent all her life building a career, and she has children. But why do I talk about avatar is because when you talk to your audience, it's much easier to talk to one person. And this is the person I talk to in my business. And as Cheryl said, my market is actually quite complicated. I do not know why I'm in that market, probably because I have a passion. I'm a publisher. Some of you might know Mindvalley. Mindvalley was started by my husband, Vishen, and actually I was also one of the co-founders 12 years ago. But I've never been lately I haven't been very active in the main company, Mindvalley, because I started Mindvalley in Russia. So I went into Russian market. And I did that out of passion because I felt that what we publish personal growth products, so we publish courses that people learn how to meditate, do yoga, do qigong, and so on. And I thought that Russian market needed that, so that's what I did. It's not an easiest market because our average customer earns about $400, and I'm talking about American dollars. They are very uncomfortable with internet. They don't trust internet. They don't understand technology very well. Sometimes they don't even know if they have a credit card or a debit card. And they have not bought anything on internet often. And of course, what they're blasted with every day is that don't trust internet. It's full of crooks. But when it comes to my job, I only have 3 goals. They have to know me, they have to like me, and they have to learn to trust me. So this is my customer, and I like the previous speaker's comparison to dating, because that's the comparison I do in my business. I think email marketing is like dating. Only I'm dating a very conservative lady who needs slow approach and proper approach. So in my market, we sell half the things offline. We cannot rely on impulse buys because a lot of people don't even have a credit card. And what it means by selling offline, that means that they would ask us, I want to buy your course. We send them an invoice, they go print it out, they go with this invoice to bank, they pay it, they come back home, they scan, they send us the receipt, and then we open the program. So this is why I'm saying I'm dating a very conservative girl. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of persistence. That's why in my work, I'm sometimes quite hardcore at what I'm doing. But despite all of that, I think we have pretty good numbers. You only need to look at these two columns, and you probably can't see very well. But basically, when we are talking about internet marketing performance, there are different ways of presenting your numbers. But the major factors that we want to look at is how many emails are being opened, how many emails are being clicked. And depending on the context, you could be presented with numbers from here to there, but in 12 years of being in business, I know that we have awesome numbers for a market that doesn't know internet very well and doesn't trust it. But what's the best about those numbers is that they stay consistent. And I think here's the hope for you guys. People say that, internet marketing is dying, nobody's opening emails. And maybe that's true, but you see, what I'm trying to tell you is that do not worry about those 60–70% of people who, in the first place, gave you their email address without any intention to ever open any of your emails. We do that, all of us do that. Focus on the 30, 20, or however many you have. Focus on that 30% who are actually genuinely interested in you. And what I've learned in years of experience is that those 30% are consistent. They will be with you over a long period of time. So talk to someone specific and talk to those who are most likely to buy your product. Do not bother about those who won't and who in the very first place didn't want to do that. So when I've talked about my work internationally, then people have started asking, how do you get such good results? And I've given this speech not many times, but over many years, and it has evolved because I also changed my ideas about what's important. But I have an interesting trait. I like to simplify things. I like to make everything which is complex as simple as possible. So after coming up with different ways of explaining what we do, I came up with a simple formula. And the formula is just like this. There are only 3 things that matter in communication with your audience, and it doesn't matter how you communicate with your audience. And the things are a personality. This is the communication one way. It's feedback. This is the communication back from your audience. And that makes the conversation. And I've been monologuing you, which is terrible. So to make a conversation, can you please nod if it makes sense so far? And if you're following me. Or you can clap. I hear it better. Thank you. So I tell you honestly, I'm really not that good communicating in real life, but if you give me an email, oh my God, I can do magic. And my mom she just came from a cruise she lives in Europe, so she came from a cruise. It was like a summer holiday. And she called me last night as I was preparing for this presentation, and she said, I read your email that you sent out on Sunday to your list about politics. And then she tried to tell me what she feels about that. We have a tradition, every Sunday I send an email just from me to my whole big audience, where I just share my very personal things. And I've got people writing back to me and saying, I have been thinking of unsubscribing, but those emails on Sundays, I just keep getting subscribed. I only wait for those emails. That's why I'm still with you guys. So the first thing what I want you to focus on is the personality. And I've got that question quite a lot. So it's good for you, because we are a fairly small business. Our audience is not very huge. It's about 250,000 people. But if you're a huge, huge business, Do you still talk? Like, does your CEO still come out and talk to audience? And you know, my answer is yes, of course. Think of any epic, huge business that you can think of, whether it's, well, Apple, our favorite. It has a strong personality speaking for it. We associate Apple with Steve Jobs. Virgin, an amazing personality. Richard Branson is speaking for it. Any big, epic business you think about, there is actually a personality behind it, or in front of it, to be precise. Whether it's, I don't know, Microsoft, Facebook, Google, everyone has a personality, because the thing is that we do not want to talk to a company, we want to talk to a person, to a human. So you have to have a personality speaking for you. Because people, you know, for you, your audience is your audience, it's a mass. It's like what I see right now. But when I sit there and I look on the stage, it's just me, and I connect to the person. I do not connect to a company. So no matter how big you are, yes, you have to speak as a personality. And there has to be a real person to tell a real story of a real life. And we do have a tradition. We just started it recently because we realized that it keeps our audience on tiptoe. It keeps our audience want to communicate with us. I told you, we send every Sunday, I personally sit down and send an email. And that email that my mom commented, I was actually in Singapore for a long weekend with my kids, and you know, Universal and all these crazy things. And one morning I wake up and the kids are still sleeping, and this thought came in my head, and I just started writing, and I wrote whatever came into my mind. And it was very personal, it was me. And it's okay, you don't always have to talk very personal about yourself, but once in a while, remind people that you're a real person. Of course, it's better if most of your communication is related to what you sell, of course. But once in a while, it's okay to be a real person. And I want to give you an example of one email I wrote actually 1.5 years ago, and I hope I will never have to write this email again. But the story was very simple. We had launched a product, and we were in the middle of the launch, emails having to go out every day. And one day I come from work, I pick up my kid from school, and I can see he's sick. I take him to the hospital, and a few hours later, he is being in the surgery. And the next morning, my team calls me and asks, you know, you were supposed to write an email for today, but it's okay if you don't. We understand you're in the hospital. But my son was still very groggy. He had not woken up properly, so I said, it's okay, I'll write the email. So I was sitting there looking at my kid after the surgery, and we were launching a product about eternal youth and health, and here I am in hospital. What the hell happened to me? So I put these thoughts into the email, and believe it or not, it was a sales email. We had 58-something% open rate and click-through rate of 40%. People actually cared to see what I was offering them after I was vulnerable. And I'm not saying please dig up the dramatic moments out of your life, no. I hope I'll never have to write this email again. But if it happens, it's okay to sometimes be weird, vulnerable, you know, yourself. I have mastered the art of making mistakes and admitting them. And I'll tell you honestly, it works. So have a personal touch in your communication. I think this is extremely important, and I never tire to stress that. Just a few little tips. Videos do magic, so if you have the capacity, shoot a video no matter how professional and talk to people in real, like what you are. And live events, meet with your customers. Meet and talk to them, because you'll get a chance to take good pictures and then infuse some reality into your virtual world, into your virtual being. Because you see, my market is in Russia. I hardly ever go to Russia. I live here in Malaysia. That's my home. So it's important when you communicate through internet to give the glimpses of the life being real and now, and there being other people there. So I'll move on. So the next thing, which I think is super important in our formula, is the conversation. And if there is just one word that I want you to remember after this talk, it would be the conversation. Because the most important thing you could have with your audience is a conversation. And conversation is a two-way traffic. You talk, but you have to hear. And I know I'm not hearing you, but I'm looking at you, because it's important for me to see what you think, or try to see what you think. Ask questions. Ask questions, because this is the source for you of the information of whether you're doing it right or wrong. We had one terrible launch which just didn't go well, And we thought, okay, if we didn't sell that well, at least we could learn from that. So we sent an email to everybody who didn't buy and asked, why didn't you buy? That was an amazing experience. And by the way, some of them bought after that question. I don't know why. So listen, learn to listen to your audience. And here I'd like to bring this thing. It's a balanced diet. It's like with health. If you want to be healthy, you need to eat vegetables, you need to not eat too much sugar and stuff like that. The same with the conversation and communication with your audience. You have to keep to a balanced diet. If you give too much of something and not enough of something else, your communication will be unhealthy. So this is my idea of a balanced diet. The biggest chunk of my communication with people is the value, or in internet marketing, it's more known as content. If you are not in content business, it's any value that you as a business can give. Any knowledge, any resources, anything what your potential customer might want to have for free. So something which will give people a glimmer of hope that their problem can be solved. Something that will give people an opportunity to get some results. Maybe they won't be 100% results, but something. And I usually spend about 40% of my effort in creating that kind of communication. The next chunk is engagement, and that is extremely important. Because you see, when you communicate, in my case, it's easier for me, of course, to bring examples from my own business. I publish personal growth products. We have loads of content. And it's easy for me to send out videos, lessons, podcasts, meditations, whatever. I have a lot of content. But if I do that, my audience just consumes passively. So for me to want, and purchase is not a passive consumption. Purchase is actually an activity. So not to train your audience to just consume passively, you have to once in a while ask them to do something. And engagement is not sales-related doing something. It's usually, can you reply to that question? Can you answer the poll question? Can you leave a comment? Can you send my email to a friend? Any kind of request. There are so many ideas how you can engage your audience to do something. It doesn't have to be a very complicated thing, but they have to get off the sofa and do something. And that leads us to sales, which is an ultimate form of engagement, because this is an engagement essentially, but this engagement, the goal of that engagement is to actually make a purchase. I mean, audience has to make a purchase. And I want to tell you just 2 words, which is a little bit sidetracked. Please do sell yourself. And I know it might sound very simple and cliché, but that's true. You have to sell yourself. We are very open about sales. If you're planning to sell, do not try to trick your customer. They know you will try to sell. Just say that straight from the start. I will sell. Usually people relax. Okay, you will sell. Now let me hear what you have to tell me. So we're very open about our sales from the start. We always have an opportunity for people to buy. So sometimes we do send sales emails, so that chunk of about 20% is actually the emails where I actually ask people to go and buy. But we have sales in our regular emails as well, in our signatures, maybe little advertisements of our own product on our own blog. So sales are important. You have to have them infused. And the more open you are about that, the easier people take the fact that you will sell to them. And the last one, which is like spices to food. It's not necessary, but it makes life so much more pleasurable. It's the inspiration. That's my favorite, actually. In my business, it makes a lot of sense. But the goal of this communication is just to make people feel good. Because you see, if they feel good, they'll like you more. Because you made them feel good. What is love, essentially? Love is, we often love the person who makes us feel good. And the last very important thing of the 3 is feedback. And this picture is just an example. You see, I have business in Russian, so a lot of things are, if you saw it closer, you would see that it's in Russian. But here I want to urge you to actually hear what your audience have to say back to you and adjust what you're saying after you hear that. And there are many ways of getting feedback. One is, of course, metrics. If you send an email out, how many people of those who received your email opened it? How many people of those who received your email actually clicked? There are other metrics. How many people have commented on your postings, liked, shared, reposted? There are a lot of ways to measure metrics, and you should measure them, because that's an awesome feedback to what you're doing. Another way is actually read emails. We get hundreds of emails every day. I just do not have the opportunity to read the emails of our people. But my customer support sends me, for every Sunday email that I send out, they always send me a recap with quotes of what people were actually saying. I want to see the quotes because I want to hear the language that my audience is speaking. It's easier for me to talk if I know how they talk. I love their negative comments, their critique, when they come and say, I don't believe you, because it's another topic for the next email. Oh, you didn't like this? Okay, I'll answer what I think about that. And a lot of people had the same thoughts, they just didn't say. It's a great feedback. It doesn't matter whether it's positive or negative. Everything is feedback, everything an opportunity for you to change something, to communicate differently, to say the right thing. Because marketing and sales is actually just psychology. If you say the right things, they will buy. Well, if they need it, of course. And split testing, I strongly recommend whenever we start any new email sequence, we always split test at least the subject lines. Of course, it's a very small thing you can do, but at least you'll learn what subject lines your audience clicks to. And by the way, I've heard a lot of presentations about what works, what not. There are a lot of tricks. In internet marketing, we often like to talk about tricks. But I think that nobody but you will know your audience as well as you should. So if anybody asks me what will work, I say, if I learn what your audience is like, I will be able to tell you. But until I know your audience, I don't know. Because I work in an English market with my husband a little bit, and I work in a Russian market. And while people are essentially the same, still, triggers are different. People talk differently. You might maybe just need a little different of an angle. But nobody knows your audience as well as you should know it. And you should be the only expert. And do not believe if people say this will work and this will not. I've brought a trick from the biggest internet marketing conference in the world, Traffic and Conversion Summit. I tested it on my list, and it failed consistently. Because your audience is your audience. It's your partner of conversation, not somebody's, not some gurus who shares tricks with you. So learn your audience. And so I wanted to show you a few of those graphs. Partially because I want to inspire you to play with numbers. And I tell you honestly, I love numbers and statistics almost as much as chocolate and kittens. But they're awesome, for business particularly. So this is one of the email sequences we used to have. We used to build super long email sequences because I'm lazy by nature. Actually, I'm leisurely by nature, not lazy. I like to automate everything. So one of my best performing sequences was actually half a year long with 70 emails in it. But now, since we are scaling, we can't afford doing that. That was in the days when we just had one author to publish. But that sequence and building it over many years has taught me so many lessons and has taught me what my audience is really like. So this was my new take of that old sequence, and I was trying to rebuild it and redo it. I was looking at the metrics, rearranging letters, so the more popular ones were going up. And I analyzed that sequence, and I drew a few charts. So why I share those charts with you is because they taught me a few lessons. These are open rates and click-through rates throughout the whole sequence. It's a half-year-long sequence. And if you see, I add trend lines because trend lines make the things a bit easier. If you see, they're actually quite consistent. After the initial drop, the interest of people is consistent, which is really a good sign. Because we often panic and we go nuts if we see we had so many subscribers, only half of them opened our email, and then 1 week later it was only third left. But that's okay, because you see that third is the most likely third that will be your customer. And if you look at the sequence for half a year, the drop in open and click-through rates in that group of people was minimal. So why bother, worry, and fret about those who won't buy? Just focus on those. Another interesting learning I got was from these two charts. And here I was analyzing open rates and click-through rates by the category of emails. So it was value or content, engagement, and sales. And if you look at the trend lines, then I'll try to explain. We'll look at the open rates because click-through rates are a more complicated story. The yellow or the orange line is sales emails. And the green one is the engagement. And engagement drops most. It shouldn't be like this. So engagement drops even more than sales emails people open less engagement emails down the road than they open sales emails. That's ridiculous, right? But I learned from that don't try to autopilot your engagement. It just doesn't work. Engagement by nature is not autopiloted. Don't program it. Take time once a week and talk to your audience. Do not try to program it. So one more learning I learned, this is another a bit complicated chart. I stacked up emails by category, and I checked the open rates and click-through rates. And what I want you to look at is this place here. So blue is the content. So somewhere down the line, so by here we have pretty constant people who constantly open, click, and so on. And then we've been sending them a lot of content. And what happens? The click-through rates drop, the open rates drop. And that points that engagement is important. Next comes sales. And sales is essentially an engagement as well. And then suddenly everything starts going up because people need to be engaged. Don't just overflow them with your goodies. Make them do something back. And I've been actually overflowing you quite a long time, so I'm thinking now what to do. Could we all get up for a moment? I will not ask you to give some music, but maybe we can. Can we have some music? I want to share a Mind Valley tradition with you. Is there a possibility? Can anybody say yes, no? Music? No, I mean, is music going to come? I can't sing very well. But, okay, in Mind Valley we do it with music. Yes, awesome. Massage, dance massage, yes. Let's turn this way. I have no one to massage, so I'll dance. We won't do it very long, we'll turn this way now. And revenge. Thank you. And it might have been pointless, but at least you got up, and now I have your attention again. I just have a little bit left. I want to give you something practical. So how do you build an email sequence? It's super simple. First of all, line up all the goodies that you have to share. And it doesn't matter whether it's articles, videos, resources, whatever you have to share, anything. Use this chance to educate your person because your audience is essentially people who might be your customers. What does that mean? That they're people who have a problem and you have the solution to the problem. So this is your chance to educate your people, your audience, that they have a problem, they have to admit that they have a problem, and you know how to solve it, and it's solvable, and by the way, I'm the one who will solve your problem for you. So think it in these terms. What could you give to your audience so that they get this logical progression from understanding that there is something that they could do better, and there is a way to do it better, and you know that way. So line up your goodies, your value, your content, and then the next step, you just write a piece of email for every piece of goodie. My goodies are usually on blog, they're blog posts, or maybe on YouTube, well, not so often on Facebook, and I line up what I want people to read from me, and then I write an email for each blog post. The next thing, I write engagement emails in between there, because they shouldn't be just consuming. So I think, how can I engage them? The first very simple way is on the first day after they've got your email, you ask them, oh, by the way, somebody complained to me. They didn't get, a download, an audio, whatever, a video. So I was wondering, maybe you have that same problem. Why don't you reply to me very shortly? Yes, everything is fine. It's engagement. First of all, they get to reply to you. Second, they will whitelist your address in the email box, but nobody's talking about that anyway. And there are other ways, of course, to engage. You can ask people to go and like your Facebook page or leave comments somewhere or answer a poll. So add engagement emails in between. The next one is add elements of sales, so sales emails and whatever banners, postscript or calls to actions to your blog post, but add sales in that process because sales is ultimately the goal of business. And then put it all on autoresponder. Do you guys know what is autoresponder? If you know, can you raise your hand? Okay, awesome. But basically, if you don't know, it's a system where you put your email addresses of your audience and it will send letters automatically for you. So program it there. And the next step, let it run for a while. If your email sequence is like 2 weeks to 1 month, let it run for 2 months. Because you have to have the volume go through that. If you don't have many new subscribers, you will have to run it for longer, because statistics is essentially numbers, and it's a numbers game. And after you let it run, analyze it. Analyze it, like I showed to you, and redo it, because you will learn along the process. That email sequence that I showed you that performed crazy, it really performed so well that I didn't even need to give arguments to people to buy. All I needed to do is to suggest and to promote a certain give my word, this program is good. And people were so well connected with us, they just bought because they liked us and trusted us. That email sequence I rewrote at least 5 times in the course of 5 years. Because you learn, you change, and you get the feedback, and you adjust, and you make it work better. And just to illustrate how easy it is, this is one of those email sequences. That's actually one of the latest takes on that good one, which worked well. So it looks pretty scary like this, but so here's the column that shows which kind of category it is, whether it's content or engagement. So first, I wrote engagement emails. Here they are in green. Then after these were done, I added it was content, green was content. I added the yellow ones, which were engagement emails. In between there, then I added an inspirational email. I love that email, actually. It sells awesome. It only has a sales link in the signature, but it's so inspirational. It was in the top 10 best performing links in the whole sequence of 180 days. And I finished it all with sales emails. So as you can see, if you do it step by step, it's actually a pretty easy process. But forgetting all these technical things, the only thing I really want you to remember, and that's where I want to end my presentation, is a request. Please have a conversation with your audience. And I will thank you for the conversation most of all. Thanks.